Hello everyone, this is Kona and thank you for tuning in to another video. Now today let's talk about the difficulty of execution in shooting games. And by execution I mean how hard is it to mechanically do things in the game, like how complicated is it, and how much precision do you need, stuff like that. For me, shooters are all about, well, shooting. It's how fast you are with your reactions, it's can you do all that twitch shooting. And this is mainly because I grew up with games like Counter-Strike 1.6 and Medal of Honor Allied Assault. In fact, these games really forced me to be able to aim, shoot, and dodge all at the same time. But times have changed, and I want to talk about perhaps the different types of execution in shooting games, specifically between TF2 and Overwatch. Now first I want to talk about just your raw shooting ability like I mentioned before, and then the second thing I want to talk about are these special abilities that are popping up in shooters. So let's start with raw shooting ability. Now when I started playing TF2 almost 8 years ago, I said, well, okay, this is what a shooter feels like. I didn't really think anything of it. Back then I did also play Call of Duty, mainly on the console, and they did have aim assist which made things easier, but that's not really a fair comparison. But then I tried Overwatch, and the first thing I noticed was, wow, it is so easy to hit people. It's so easy to shoot people in this game. Things that honestly I think should have missed are hitting, and it sort of made me rethink about the raw shooting ability that you need for TF2 and how much TF2 is a little tougher to hit people. It becomes really apparent when you compare sniping in both games. I mean, sniping in TF2 for me is still very challenging, even though I've been playing for a while. Granted, playing in 120 ping is probably not helping, but still, it's still challenging for me. So yeah, it seems like Overwatch has very generous hitboxes. It's very easy to hit people. In fact, there are articles out there and videos that show how big these hitboxes are based on some tests. And yes, even headshots are really kind of easy to get. And perhaps they made it easier to hit people so that it makes the game more approachable, kind of like Street Fighter. Now, if you don't know, Street Fighter 5, I actually really like playing that game. They made combos in that game a lot easier to execute. So even for someone like me who could not do combos in Street Fighter 4, I can do them in Street Fighter 5 pretty easily. And by making it easier to deal damage, it now makes people think about that risk-reward of doing certain things. So if you do this in a shooter, you can put more emphasis on things like decision making, game sense, positioning, timing, things that are not directly related to execution and how hard something is mechanically to do. And those things I mentioned before are still very important in any shooter really, but those things seem very MOBA-like, perhaps that's what Overwatch is. It's just basically a MOBA with some shooting in there. And this sort of leads me into my second part of the execution in shooting games, and that's these special abilities that are popping up. Now for some heroes, it's pretty easy to use these abilities. You can use them almost anytime you want, but for some, you can create almost like combos. If you have a sequence of buttons you can press really quickly, and if you do it correctly, you can come up with these combos that are very powerful. Kind of like McCree's stun and fan shooting thing and roll and all that stuff. If you do it right, you can output a lot of damage with the other person not being able to do anything really. They don't stand a chance. And that sort of increases the execution, or at least shifts the execution if Overwatch is easier to shoot and hit people with by introducing some of these heroes that have kind of complicated combos to do. It kind of shifts the execution away from shooting and into these button presses, kind of like a MOBA. This sort of reminds me of the pyro with the old puffin sting, and oh boy, do I kind of miss that, the old one. Even though I thought it was kind of cheap, I still kind of miss it because mechanically it was a little more difficult to do than, actually it was a lot more difficult to do than W plus M1ing, right? It required you to switch weapons with precise timing. You have to actually click the mouse to hit in melee. So mechanically it was, or execution wise, it was a little more difficult to do, and it was very rewarding when you could pull it off. TF2 sort of has these combos still. The puffin sting is kind of hard to do now with the longer switching time. You still have things like the puffin shoot, the one with the reserve shooter, that still sort of works. For me also, I like to use, I don't know if this is a combo, but I like to use Demo Man with a grenade launcher plus a shield. So I just kind of lob grenades. If I hit someone at medium range, I end up just taking out my shield and just charging them. I don't know if that counts as a combo. And of course you have the scout with the Sandman and Cleaver. These are all pretty fun ways of playing. I don't know if they're the most effective ways of playing, because sometimes when I have to go try hard mode, I have to stop doing that stuff and be like, okay, I need to get some kills and actually help my team. So maybe I don't have enough practice in that, but you know, it's still a lot of fun to play with. What's nice is that by adding more execution to a character, you can create some depth to that character, something that people can actually work for. I mean, and just imagine if Soldier in TF2 didn't have rocket jumping. It's kind of hard, right? I mean, rocket jumping is just part of the Soldier, it's just what he does, but you have to actually practice that in order to take advantage of it. I think this is one of the reasons why the Heavy is kind of boring for me, is that beyond shooting, there isn't something mechanically I need to do to learn. And most of the learning for at least the progression to get better in something like the Heavy comes from, you know, game sense, map knowledge, knowing when to jump in, knowing what routes to take and stuff. I guess if you're a tank, you just, you know when to pull back, that kind of thing. And that's not really related to execution. And so to me, it makes the Heavy a little more boring to play. I kind of wish he had something a little bit more. So yeah, these two games, TF2 and Overwatch, have very interesting approaches to how mechanically challenging their game can be, how hard it is to execute things. I do see the benefits of having depth to a playstyle by making things harder to execute, because when you practice it and then it works in a real match, it really feels good. You know, when that time you got your first trimping kill as a demo man, the first time you got a stair stab, that feels amazing. When you're playing Soldier and you get an air shot with another soldier, that feels great. But I also understand the benefits of having very powerful abilities up front that are easy to use, so that the player has a sense of power and influence in the game. So I understand you need that as well. So my question for you is, where do you think the execution of a shooter should be? Should it be in the shooting, or should it be in the special abilities that are popping up? Or, do you think that games nowadays or shooters nowadays are maybe too easy to actually do damage? Let me know in the comments below. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you very much for watching, and have a great day.